I'm Bill DeFoi. Welcome back in here to News Junkies. And visiting with me this time is the very lovely Michele Wilson from Premier Solutions. Michele, good to have you back with us.
Thank you for having me back. It's always a joy to be with you.
Well, listen, we've got a lot to talk about this go-around. There was a headline in the paper recently that Experian, one of the three major credit reporting agencies, suffered a data breach, and it involved potential customers of T-Mobile. What's going on?
Wow, it's pretty amazing. T-Mobile actually has a vendor's contract with Experian. So when potential customers want to get T-Mobile as a product or service, they have to do a credit check. So basically that database, and it's 2 years. They've been exposing their information since about September of 2013. So, and they're just now catching the breach that basically their name, address, social security, date of birth, even passports, and even military's ID, all that information, because those are all personal identifying information that was lost. It was about 15 million consumers' information that was lost in this particular data breach.
Well, I was telling you just before we started capturing this for the camera that one of my friends got a notice in the mail and they were impacted by this data breach. What can people do when they get that notice, and what course of action should they be taking?
Well, one, also be very cautious when you get those letters, because unfortunately there's a lot of scammers out there. So they're probably going to even take advantage of the people who got breached and they're not really part of the breach. So you might be getting a letter that actually didn't come from T-Mobile or Experian. So you want to be very careful. Don't give out any type of information. You want to call Experian directly or, T-Mobile directly and get advice. Another thing that you could do is put an alert on your credit report. Unfortunately, a credit alert, it only covers the financial because, as I said before in other interviews that we've had, there's different types of identity theft. So, but you can still put an alert, and then you want to change your passwords on your information, your financials information, even in your emails if you gave up that type of information. So those are some things that they can do. But bottom line, it's kind of like when you have car insurance, or home insurance, you want to have some type of protection.
That's right.
In the beginning, because what happens after, it's almost too late. And as you can see, it's become a professional. It's become very professional. These criminals are really professional. So you really want a professional to be able to help you restore your identity if something were to happen.
One of the things that just occurred to me, this same individual has also been getting a series of phone calls from an individual or a group of individuals claiming to be the IRS, saying, you owe us back taxes. One call was, well, you owe us this amount on a credit card, and another time an IRS. This is probably an outgrowth of that data breach.
Actually, that's been around for a little while, a few months. I actually experienced that too, and it's really intimidating, those calls. I remember my daughter was calling me, she was blowing up my phone because she's like, I got this call and they're saying that they're going to arrest me and so forth. And I do have an identity theft protection. So I was able to actually call my provider and get some, consultation. They told me, no, it's a scam. And they told me exactly what to do, that I could report them and so forth. But one thing to remember, that IRS will never contact you by phone, and that's what's getting the word out. They will never contact you by phone. It's always by postal mail, by mail, and not even email. They won't contact you.
No, it's always done with a written notice.
Exactly.
I've had dealings in the past, all good with the IRS, but yes, it's all done with a written notice, and even at that, they'll say, you have so many days to take action upon receipt of this letter.
Yes, absolutely, and just. It's unfortunate, like I said, people are still not aware that they don't know that the IRS was only going to do it by mail, but that is definitely the one way to know that it is from IRS, and just contact them, not the number like in the letter. I mean, you can find the IRS telephone number, and you want to make sure that you're just not receiving the calls, that you're actually making the call.
Yeah, and the last four digits, it's an 800, 1040 is the last four digits. I forget what the three other digits are, but it's 800 ... 1040, you got the IRS.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, and they have, for people here on the West Coast where we live, they're around till I believe like 9 o'clock at night to, to accommodate people that live in Hawaii, which are 3 hours behind California. So you can always get through to the IRS during reasonable hours.
And with that, you also want to make sure, I was going to say, you can Google their number, but you also got to be careful of Googling, because sometimes you're not on the right site if you don't input the right information. It's .gov, but I've noticed also sometimes you input, we're making a search, and you got to be really careful that you are actually on the right site, because you can actually think you're on the government site, the IRS site, and you're not. So I was going to say Google the number, but that may not be, the best way either. But, your tax professional would know the IRS, telephone number. So I would definitely call your tax professional and say, hey, if you're not really sure what the number is, to contact your tax professional.
Going back to this thing with T-Mobile and Experian, first of all, there's a level of concern that there's a credit reporting agency that has been breached, let alone T-Mobile's customers. That, to me, is a major concern. And what is Equifax doing, and the other, Experian, and there's Equifax and TransUnion.
Yeah, it is really disturbing, and I'm not really sure what they are doing. It seems like, when they're putting those security measures, it's every 6, months, it's always changing. There's always some type of virus, and there's just so many people. Really, it's about informing your customers, what they can do to protect themselves. I mean, it's really, I was just listening recently that we can just assume that all our information's been taken some way or another, and it's really the best is to have the protection. Our customers, the companies can do their best to try to avoid their, leaking the information, but unfortunately, anything on the internet is kind of an open source, and there's the firewalls, they're changing, updating all the time, but unfortunately, the criminals are just always seeking ways to monetize that. So it's really the best way is through protection. You can't really depend on someone else to have your information protected.
It brings up a whole new can of worms, too, because there are services for a small fee. You can get a person's address, telephone number, email address for $5 or $6.
Yes, and it's like I said, it is very disturbing that you could do a search and you can really find that information out there. Even with Google Maps, you can actually Google and put an address in there, and you can see your home. So, really vulnerable out there. And it's also getting consultation. Just really speaking with professionals that understand how identity theft works. I just think if we're more informed, then we can protect ourselves a little bit better. But yeah, it's amazing how our information is just out there. I say in the World Wide Web, and it's really sad. We're doing commerce more on the internet. The more we're doing, the more convenience we have. Unfortunately, the less we're losing in our privacy.
Yeah, I know. I like to shop at home and be in my PJs, and that's great for my granddaughter in Indiana, and this is good for my grandson who lives over here, and so on and so forth. And I don't even have to go out of the house. And yet, to buy these products, to buy these services, you have to put in credit card information, and you're dealing on Wi-Fi. It's very rare anymore where you're actually physically plugged in to a router. It's all Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and I even say if you're shopping online and you're putting your credit card information in there, you may want to have just a credit card, even like a pay card. You don't want it attached to your because a lot of people use debit cards, not attached to your bank account, and just use that. And I'd say an online, purchasing, so that if something were to happen, you're not going to get hit as hard. Just recently I had an issue. It wasn't identity theft, but the vendor. withdrew the wrong amount from my credit card. And it was, wow, so you may just want to have a credit card that's, with a low limit, a credit card or a debit card that's really low, or even a prepaid card so that you can make those purchases. I mean, they still may have your name, but at least it's not attached to your bank account where they're just withdrawing money, and that could be devastating. They'll probably put it back, but, in that time that you're having and investigating and put it back, that could be very detrimental in just your household.
Well, getting back to this whole thing with the breach by Experian or to Experian and affected these T-Mobile customers, what advice would you give people that have received one of these notices that their information has been compromised? What would you tell those people?
First, like I said earlier, just be really cautious of the letters, because you just want to make sure that it's Experian or T-Mobile that actually issue those letters, and do not give out any more information. Now, they are offering what they call a breach product for free, but it's only for 12 to 24 months. And unfortunately, if there was a identity theft that wasn't directly related to that loss, then they're not covered. So, and it's usually just monitoring of your credit information. And you really want a protection, identity theft protection, that monitors what matters, which is everything. It's your address and the dark web and, your passport. So you just really, and the monitoring helps just to say, I always say it's kind of like a silent crime. If your car gets broken into, immediately that you've been broken into, but your identity, you don't know. And so, you could be pulled over for a routine traffic violation, and then find out you have a warrant out for your arrest. So that's why I say you just really want to have a really good identity theft protection. And like I said, you could change your passwords on your accounts to protect yourself. The shredding, unfortunately, these days is not going to do it. It's just really monitoring your private information as much as you can.
Well, you had brought up a point earlier about putting, some type of a fraud alert on your credit history through the different bureaus that we've mentioned, but that really doesn't cover breaches when it comes to your health information.
You're right, and that's, 17% is actually financial. The fastest growing is medical, and so you want a protection plan that's going to actually monitor your medical information, because there's a product out there that you can actually put in your insurance information card. And but the thing is, it's not so much like the indicators before, but what when you do find out about it, what happens after that. And if you are not a professional knowing how to get through the system and trying to entangle that, it's just going to take a long, many hours. They say the average case could take up to 200-300 hours. And I remember you said you were a victim at one time, and it took you a long time.
It took me actually, the first week it was nonstop, morning to night, phone calls, and various forms of communication with the credit reporting agencies. And, I'd get calls from merchants saying, you lousy scumbag. And I'm going, hey, wait, it's not me.
Yeah.
And I would have to, in fact, in one case with a major grocery chain, I had to go down and they showed me the check that was written. It was a bad check. And I didn't even do bank business with this particular bank. And I had to go down and get my signature notarized, bring it back to the grocery headquarters and say, this is who I am. Here's a copy of my driver's license. That's not my signature. Oops. That's right. It's not. It had no bearing, of resemblance whatsoever to the actual signature that I used. And it was kind of scribbled, and mine is a very distinct signature. And I've often been accused of having a doctor's signature. But that being said, I had to really fight tooth and nail, and that consumed really about 2 to 3 weeks initially, but the process went on for years.
Yeah, imagine if that same situation happened in another state. Are you going to take time off from work? Then you have the cost of flying down there to prove that that isn't you. And that's where the costs come, is just all this proving that it's not you. And how do you do that? Sometimes it's really, really difficult. You eventually did it, but you had to go down there physically and show them that, hey, the signatures don't match. And I was actually just met someone recently, same thing happened. And she was actually a young girl who when she turned 18, she was actually trying to get a job, and they said, no, you committed this crime. And she had to go to, 2-3 hours away from her home, and it took a year to get it fixed. She had to hire an attorney, and still to this day, it pops up every now and then. So, that's why I say it's really important to have the protection. And before it happens, because for you to go it alone, it could take just hours and just the money and, just the stress.
Well, there was a
havoc.
lot of time, money, and,
Yeah.
a lot of effort going into getting this cleared, and by and large, it's been cleared up, but it took a period of several years to do it.
Yeah.
The good news is, when it comes to the end of this story, the guy was eventually caught,
Oh, that's a good
convicted,
story.
put in jail. Thank you.
That is a good story. And unfortunately, the reason why identity theft is the #1 consumer complaint is because we don't have enough law enforcement to keep up with it. It's just so usually you hear about more of the bigger chain, the bigger chains that are
Well,
happening.
we had Target here not all that long ago that was breached.
Right.
And I talked to, just in passing conversation with my cell phone and / internet provider, and they were working on shoring up their security at Target. So instead of having just one level, it was like multiple levels
Yeah.
that somebody would have to hack through to get to the information.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, they do need those layers, but it seems like I've read or noticed that it takes them. This breach didn't just happen overnight. I mean, they've had this leak in their system for a couple of years, and all of a sudden, wow, I guess it's the dark web. They call it the dark web because it's dark, but it really takes them a few years to even discover that they've had this type of open network that these criminals can come into and take the information. I mean, it's kind of like they're siphoning this information off a long period of time before they discover it. So even have those measures of how they can get it quicker than, sooner or later is what I'm saying with that, having
Well, in my case, the person that they arrested was a loan agent for a consumer loan company that at one time I had done business with, and he was rifling through all of the files and extracting those with the best credit and going out and destroying them. He got caught on a traffic stop in a car that was rented in my name, but it had not been returned back to the rental agency and had come up as a grand theft auto. And he had to explain that, and they said, this is not matching up. They took him in, and one thing led to another. They filed charges, and eventually he was arrested. But in the meantime, one of the things that happened to me with this whole process is because he had gone in, and the technology has changed, but back in the day, he got a driver's license with my name but his photo. And so, long story short, there was an investigation done by the Department of Motor Vehicles. I spoke with an investigator who came to my office. We sat down, and he said, here's your perpetrator, and showed me the picture.
Yeah.
And technology today, you go into a DMV office, they can snap a picture of you and then call up your record, and they can see if the face matches.
Yeah.
And they can see the aging process, obviously, but if it's a match, then okay, you're good to go. But if it's if they were to take my picture, but your name came up and it didn't match your face, guess what? No dice, no reissuance of the license. So, but back in the day, that's what happened. So.
And he wouldn't have gotten caught if he didn't get pulled over. So he still so it wasn't really like they had an investigation on him. It's just because he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And what had
Yeah.
happened, he blew through a stop sign.
Oh my gosh, so yeah, and just because that information didn't add up, but if that didn't happen, he could still be out there, creating havoc on your identity. So, just going back to is just really we don't have the law enforcement to go out there and really investigate all these crimes and that's why the thieves are out there doing it, because it's an easy crime to do without, it's not the same as when you go into the bank, you could see them and, the police officers, law enforcement are called, but it's different, they're robbing banks from, their basement, and it's just an easier crime, and it's hard to detect,
It is very, very hard to detect. And like I said, I had a happy ending to this, and I had to get my driver's license number changed, actually, which it takes an act of Congress to get that done. But because he had breached my records, then the DMV actually sealed up my
That's
driving
right.
record. And when I went to apply for insurance on my car, I had to sign a special waiver saying, I authorize so-and-so agent to peer into the history of my driving record to see if I was a good driver, or if I blew through stop signs, which I don't do that, but
Yeah,
you understand.
right.
And eventually they lifted that ban, so now my insurance companies can, that I deal with, which is one, but they can actually go in, oh, you've got a great driving record, we're going to get you a better rate.
Right. I mean, and see how you got affected is because they had to close it up. Then all your history was gone, and but you're like, that's me, and it is a scary situation, and luckily it's just inconvenience and kind of scary for the few years. But I'm happy that you were able to get that cleared up.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I am too. Well, listen, we're at the end of our time. I would love to give you the opportunity, as I do each time we get together, to give out your email, your web address, phone number, where people can contact you for more information about what you do through Premier Solutions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. My telephone number is 805-304-5088, and my email address is Michele, Michele, at premiersolutionsinternational.com, and our website's Premier Solutions International, and international is actually intl.com. So thank you so much, Bill. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
And we'll see you back here next time. I'm Bill DeFoi. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Michele Wilson. We'll see you next time here on News Junkies, a production of the Heritage Media Group.